Hello everyone. My name is Vivek. I am a software engineer. I make videos about Kubernetes containers and related technologies and sometimes about software engineering in general. So in some of the previous videos, we actually looked into how we can create a Helm chart for our application. And in this particular video, we are going to look into how we can host that particular Helm chart onto a public repo so that others who want to use our application can actually try to deploy it using Helm, right? So this is the application that we were working on, and we also raised a PR on this GitHub repository that we have. And from last video, what I have done is I just have merged this particular PR. So this PR was about creating the Helm chart for your application, and I have made another video about that. So if you want to check that out, maybe you should check that out as well. So what we have now is we have our library application. As you can see here, we have our library application, and we also have Helm chart created for that application, and everything related to Helm chart is inside this particular directory, that is Helm, right? And in this particular video, we are actually going to look into how we can host this particular Helm chart onto a public repository, public Helm repository, so that others can actually install it. So for example, if we have published our application using a public Helm repo, if someone wants to install it, all they have to do is, first step, they will have to add the repo, right? So that Helm would be able to figure out the applications that are hosted on that repo. So for example, if you have your application hosted on a specific repo, so for example, let's say abc.xyz slash, let's say library slash charts. If your Helm applications are hosted here, you will have to add this Helm repo using Helm repo add, then name of the repo, and then the endpoint that we have here, right? So this is what we are going to do. We are going to create a public Helm repo using GitHub Pages, and then we are actually going to publish our chart in that repo so that anyone can actually try to or anyone can actually install the application that we have, right? So as we have discussed in the previous videos, the all the details, all the manifests that are supposed to be deployed as part of your Helm chart would be inside this particular directory, that is Helm. I would like to say that if you are not familiar with the directory structure of a Helm chart, you should, I'd recommend you checking my previous videos out. So now that we have created a Helm chart for our application, let's just go ahead and try to have a look into this particular directory. So this is how the directory looks like, right? And if we now if we talk about a Helm repository, right? So this is how a Helm repository looks like. So for example, you would have a directory named charts, and in that directory you would have a manifest file or metadata file, I would say, named index.yaml. And this index.yaml is going to have details about all the charts that are hosted by this particular repository, right? So there are chances that, so for example, let's say if I'm creating this Helm repository, right, for my organization, and my organization is hosting, or let's say publishing n number of applications or n number of Helm charts, right? In that case, this charts directory is going to have n number of applications. So let's say I'm going to host library, and let's say I'm going to host another chart, that is Nginx, right? So there are chances that this repo, or most of the time, all the Helm repos are going to host more than one application, and details about all these applications is going to be inside index.yaml, right? So inside index.yaml, we would have details on what are all the applications that are supported or that are exposed by this repository, and what is what are their details, for example, which version of chart we are publishing and things like that, right? We are actually going to look into this index.yaml in very much detail in a bit, but this is how a typical Helm repository structure looks like, right? So you would have charts directory and then index.yaml file, and this index.yaml file is actually going to have details about the Helm applications that are being hosted. Now, if we talk about our specific scenario, this is the Helm application that we are going to host, right? And in our last video, we actually generated the scaffold code and we did not change a lot of things. So let's just go ahead and try to refactor that a bit, right? So first of all, the very first thing that I would like to change here is let's name this to library, right? And a Helm chart to deploy, maybe library application, right? And all these details are going to be inside the index.yaml, right? And we are going to look into that, how that happens. So this is the chart version. So obviously we are going to have chart version to 0.1.0, and let's make app version to 0.1, right? So now there are chances you might get confused between these two. So this version is for the Helm chart version, right? And this version is for the application that you are hosting or application that you are packaging using this Helm chart. So in our case, this is let's say library application version, and this is chart version, right? So now that we have changed these things, let's just go ahead and try to package this particular Helm chart that we have, right? And as we discussed in here, these particular files are actually tarballs of the Helm repos. So to actually package a Helm chart, what we can do is we can use another or a utility of Helm named Helm package, right? But before that, let's just go ahead and try to create another branch. So host repo, or let's say Helm repo host, right? And the reason is if we look into this particular code structure that we have, or GitHub repo, we have everything in our master branch, right? But we want to host, let's say hypothetically, we want to host Helm repo in another branch. We can do that in master as well, but let's just go ahead and try to host that in a new branch that we create. And in that new branch, we are just going to have the charts directory that we discussed about here, right? So now Helm package, or let's just go ahead and try to create a directory named charts, right? And Helm package, and we want to package this chart, right? And into the directory charts, and it says okay, so I was expecting this file to be generated inside charts. So let me just go ahead and try to remove this, and I'm going to alright, so -d should be provided for the destination. So alright, Helm package, and the chart is in Helm directory, and I want this to be generated inside inside this charts directory that we have created. Alright, so it says that the chart has successfully been packaged to this particular directory, right? Now this is the chart that we are going to publish to our public Helm repo, right? This is the package chart, and as you can see, this is the chart name, and this is the chart version, right? Now, to actually generate the index.yaml file, there is this another utility that Helm provides. So Helm repo and index, and this expects a chart, right? So we are going to specify the chart that is inside charts directory. And now if we cd into charts, we can see that this is the application and this is the index file that has been generated. Now if we just go ahead and try to look into this index file that we have here, we can see that these are all the details that we have specified in the applications chart.yaml, as you can see here, right? So for example, this is the description, this is the app version, this is name, type, and every other thing, right? Now one thing that I would like to discuss about is digest. So digest is something that is used to verify that one file is same. If it is transferred over some places, the contents are same, and it has not been changed, right? And to figure out the digest, what you can do is you can actually use SHA-SUM command with algorithm 256, and you can specify the file, right? So we want to generate SHA-SUM for this particular file, and this should be the file, right? Sorry, this should be the SHA that is mentioned here. And if we talk about URLs, so if someone queries this particular Helm repo, so in that particular case, and tries to install library, this is the chart that is going to be installed, right? And we can see in the directory structure, the chart is present over here, right? So this is how. Now all we have to do is we will have to somehow host or publish this particular directory onto a public server, right? This is all we have to do. We have a packaged application, right? And we have index.yaml file, and we just have to publish them publicly so that users can add the Helm repo onto their machine, and then they can install the things. Now to publish this, there are a lot of ways. For example, you just need a server that can serve static files. For example, if even it's possible that you can upload these things to your public storage buckets, and from there the things can be served, right? But what we are going to do in this particular video is we are going to use GitHub Pages, because GitHub Pages can also be used to serve static files, right? So let me just go ahead and try to do the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this. Okay. And when we push this, all right, so we have successfully pushed the entire thing onto new branch in our GitHub repo, right? So as you can see here, if we try to see all the branches, we would be able to see the new branch that we just have pushed our code into. So Helm repo host. Now all we have to do is we just have to somehow serve this particular charts directory, right? Using GitHub Pages. So to do that, let's just go ahead and go to settings, and after settings we are going to figure out where do we have GitHub Pages. And here we have to specify the branch that we want to serve, or we want to host or publish using GitHub Pages. So we want to host Helm repo host branch, right? And root directory. This is how we can specify the root directory. And then if I click on save, I would be able to see the URL for this particular URL for this particular repo, we can say, right? And this is the URL that we see. So now in a way we can say that we have successfully hosted a Helm repo, right? So this is the repo that we had locally. So inside this particular charts directory, we have everything that is needed to create a Helm repo. Now we have pushed that into a branch of this particular GitHub repo, that is Vivek Singh library, and we have made that publicly available using GitHub Pages, right? So now all we have to do is we have to just add this particular endpoint, right, using Helm repo add, right? And then we just have to install our application. So let's just go ahead and try to do that. So Helm repo add, or let me show you without adding the repo. So Helm install, and then name of the application, let's say library, and then we have to specify the repo, right? And since we have not added the repo, so this is the format, repo and then chart name, right? So since we don't actually have added the repo yet, things are not going to work, right? So let's just go ahead and try to add the repo. So Helm repo add, name of the repo, let's say name it Vivek's, right? And the endpoint is going to be this. And okay, so it says library is not a valid chart repository because we have to specify the directory where index.yaml is present, and index.yaml is inside charts directory, right? And you can see that we have successfully added Vivek's as Helm repo. Now if I just go ahead and try to install the things now, so Helm install, name of the application, then repo is Vivek's, and then application name. To see the application name, we can see the index.yaml, that is library, right? And here we go, right? And if I press enter, things would be installed on this particular cluster. Now one thing I would like to emphasize is we are not using local chart now. We are installing the things from a publicly hosted repo. And if I press enter, all the things that are there in the charts should be installed on this particular cluster. And we can see that two namespaces are just being created, database and REST API. And if you look into kget pods from database namespace, we see that a pod also has been created. And if we see pvc from database namespace, this would not actually be bound because storage class that we are using is standard, and we don't have any storage class named standard in this particular cluster, right? So let's just go ahead and try to delete the Helm chart, and we are going to install it providing some custom values, right? So Helm install and library and -- set. Now when we host a Helm chart, we usually specify all the values that can be set, right, in a README or in a documentation. But right now what we can do is we can just go ahead, since we developed this particular chart, we can go to values and we can specify all the values, or we can figure out all the values that can be provided using -- set flag, right? So one thing that we can specify is database.volume.storage class name. So -- set database.volume.storage class name equals to do-block-storage, right? Because this is the storage class that is present on the cluster. And if we press enter, Here we go. So chart has been installed, and if we get PVCs from database namespace now, we should be able to see that it has been bound, because now we have changed the storage class to block storage, right? And this is what we discussed about in some of the previous videos, that this is the benefit of using a package management tool, right, to distribute your application, so that if someone wants to install your application, they can provide the values in the runtime while installing your chart, right? So yeah, I mean, as you can see, we have successfully hosted our applications using GitHub Pages on a public repo, and this can be installed by anyone if they want to, right? The other thing that I would like to discuss about is, in here we can see that in this particular branch we have a lot of things, right? So in repo host branch we have a lot of other things, for example source code and Helm chart, but all these things are not actually required. We just need charts directory with index.yaml and all the packaged charts that we are hosting, right? Now there are chances that if you want to host, as we discussed, you want to host more than one application, Helm applications in a repo, right? And that is what people do all the time, right? So what you are going to do is you are just going to have another packaged Helm application in the same directory, right? And you can use Helm repo index with that particular application, and respective entries would be made into index.yaml, right? So if you look into index.yaml once again, you can see that this entries is right now just having library, but let's say you want to host another application, we can use Helm repo index utility to add another entry here to host another chart or another version of the same application, right? And I think we have discussed about almost all the fields that we have index.yaml. So yeah, this was pretty much it about creating a public Helm repo and publishing your chart there. Now another thing I would like to discuss about is, you can see here, if we look into this directory from index.yaml, we are actually referring to this particular tarball, right? This is the index.yaml, and we are actually referring to the Helm application, this particular Helm application, right? And it's not necessary that the packaged application and index.yaml should be on the same server, or they should be hosted together, right? It's not actually a requirement. You can host this particular packaged application anywhere you want to. You just have to specify the URL, absolute fqdn for that particular packaged application inside URLs, right? So yeah, that is another thing that I just wanted to discuss about. So it's not actually necessary that all the packaged applications and index.yaml are hosted together, right? Index.yaml can be hosted separately, and all your applications can be hosted separately, right? And fqdn of your applications should be mentioned for URLs. And if you are trying to add the repository, you will have to provide the URL where your index.yaml is hosted. So that is one thing that you can keep in mind, right? So apart from that, yeah, I mean, this was pretty much it. Another thing that I would like to discuss about is, let's say you have added the repo, right? And there are chances that another version of the application or another version of the chart has been published to the Helm repo. You can use Helm repo update to actually update your repo so that newer version of the applications can be installed, right? So yeah, Helm repo update is another command that I wanted to discuss about. Yeah, so this was pretty easy. I think the main thing is to actually spend time figuring out what are all the things that you can change while converting your application into a Helm application or into a Helm chart, right? What are all the manifests that should be modularize, and every other thing. And hosting that is actually an easy part, I would say. So yeah, this was pretty much it. If you like the video, maybe you can consider sharing it with your friends, your teammates, your colleagues, your classmates. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.